Oops, sorry about that, guys. Let me see if I can get this on. Let's see. Alright, perfect. Hello everyone, this is Shiny Noctowls, and today I figured it'd be nice to just do a short video before I finally get some rest. I've been up for a wee while now. I actually might deliver an order, a trading card order I have before I get off to bed, just so I can get that wrapped up. But I want to do a quick video on Ancestry because I've been thinking about it for the last few days now, particularly regarding my connection to my Rainbu Japanese ancestry. And so when I say Rainbu Japanese, I most of my ancestry, as you guys have seen, is predominantly Celtic, Gallo-Celtic, which is connected to what used to be called Gaul, or well, what is Gaul is still there, just gone through different names. So I've mentioned like the Sequani, the Aedui, and I also had some uh, Celtic ancestry from Britain and Ireland as well that had mixed with the Bellbeaker population, such as the Gaels, the Picts, and Bretons. But I want to cover another part of my ancestry that I think is important to share as well, because I do mention it sometimes, but I figure it's worth to share it a wee bit more. And I think now is as a good time as ever because I noticed recently I got a match on my True Ancestry that connected to an individual from, in this case, it was from ancient China or Henan from 5,000 years ago or over 5,000 years ago. It sounds like Heian in Japanese, like the Heian period, if you guys have heard of that, or medieval Japan. And I noticed her maternal haplogroup is D4B2B. So this wasn't like a deep dive match I got, so it doesn't say that I share chromosomes with this individual. But the genetics distance that I am to this individual was a lot closer than to any other, I guess, Native American samples. Because I do want to let you guys know I'm kind of a mixture of many things. Um, and I've recognized that, you know, for my dad, or we can start with my uncle Herman. Or actually, let's start with my great grandmother Lita. So my great grandmother Lita, you know, was married to my great grandfather Cleves in Colombia, or in Spanish, you'd say Colombia. Um, and I noticed she looked very similar to a Japanese person known as Dayako Shitama. And so I asked myself, you know, why does Lita look so similar to this Japanese person? And you know, I noticed the same thing with my uncle Cherokee Japanese Herman, that he looks very similar to Nobu Uematsu, who is the creator of, or one of the major musical composers for the Final Fantasy series. And so I asked myself, you know, what, you know, it's like they could be brothers. It's like if they, um, you know, saw each other and somewhere in Tokyo, I feel like they would come together and eat, and they'd have a good time with each other. And so I recognize that when we look at my ancestry, this is just one example of it. I really have enjoyed the Maitri ancestry because it really has expanded. Um, you know, my uncle Cherokee Japanese Herman would always call me Celtic healer, Celtic healer, Celtic healer, and I can see it now. A lot of the Gallo-Celtic samples I have, I'll share it to you quickly. Um, I got you know I got quite a motley amount of ancestry. The Gallo Celts or the ethnic Celts were really genetically closer to the Spanish, the Portuguese, the French, and the South Dutch. And that's because, as I've mentioned to you before, when the Celts had arrived to Britain and Ireland, there were already people there known as the Bellbeaker people. And I'm also related to those people as well. I can show you guys here. Um, got one from Germany from 4,500 years ago, and you can see they're mainly related to North Germanic and Scandinavian groups, such as Norwegian, Swedish, North Dutch, Danish, and a little bit of Scottish and Orkney, because the Norse also went into Scotland as well, and you can see Longbards, Chaucer, Beller, Ute, and Suebi. Um, and I do have a match. Well, I have a fair few matches with Bretons. Um, this is one of the ones with the most synapses. And so you can see here, this individual was a mixture of Celts, Gael, Breton, Pic, Celtic Regentii, and really, this individual would have been more of a mixture of, well, he would have had Celtic, of course, but he would have also had Belbeaker, and that's probably why he's matching closely to also North Dutch and Danish, which would make sense because the Belbeakers also would have been connected to those populations in Norwegian and such. And then you still have the Spanish because, as I mentioned before, the Spanish are also connected to the Celts. They're just more connected, a little bit more, some of them to the continental Celts or the Gauls. Well, still Celts, but just like in mainland Europe. And that's why the Celtic holiday, well, the holiday we just had, Halloween, or I know Japanese use the word Obon or Obon, and then the Mexicans use Dia de los Muertos. In Celtic spirituality, there's Samhain, which is how you would say it in Britain and Ireland. And then if you want to say it the Celtic, Gallo-Celtic way, you would say Samonios, which is essentially the same holiday, just two different ways of saying it. And so, what was interesting about this individual that I found, well, first thing I found her maternal haplogroup D4B2B was found at its highest frequency in Japan, followed by China and Korea. I think Japan was like 4%, China 2%, Korea 1%. And I noticed the maternal haplogroup was also found sometime around the Jomon period, 5,000 years ago, and then even after, which I thought was interesting as well. Um, and what's interesting is this individual was not only of East Asian origin, she also had European lineage, which I thought was quite interesting. I told myself, how did these Germanic groups and then Gallo-Celtic groups that I'm related to, like the Sequani and Adui, how how were they all the way in the Far East 5,000 years ago, or over 5,000 years ago? It kind of makes me think of Legends Arceus a little bit. I don't know if you guys have ever played Legends Arceus, but it's uh it's a game that I played. That's I've been playing Legends ZA now, and they actually made a reference to Legends Arceus, which I thought was funny. Legends Arceus, by the way, for you guys who don't know, is in Japan, or kind of in I think in Hokkaido, and Legends ZA is in France. Um, and so it's interesting how somehow, some way, um, for whatever reason, even 5,000 years ago, or over 5,000 years ago, there was already an ancient connection, already, um, people think that Hafu and Quarterfu and all that is new, but it shows that Rainbu has already existed once before. Rainbu Japanese has already existed once before, and it's kind of like that, the sun setting and then the sun rising again. It's like it's almost like the some of the Japanese didn't realize that some of them were already connected to us, you know, even long, long, long ago. Um, you can see the modern day populations this individual is connected to is Spanish, Portuguese, Puerto Rican, North Italian, French, which I thought was kind of funny because I know some of the Japanese are really into to French culture. You can see just different groups this individual would have matched to. You don't really see Japanese, Korean, or Chinese because I guess this individual was really heavily influenced by European ancestry, and that's probably why she's so close to me. But she still has her East Asian maternal lineage, which, it just shows that even, long, 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 long ago, there was still that um, connection. And then you can have even if you want to go further back, and this is where my dad got his maternal lineage also is connected to like maternal haplogroup D4H3A, and I can show that sample. My dad got it. I didn't exactly, or at least not yet, as it were, on my true ancestry. But it just shows how if you go back over 10,000 years ago, that I guess when the Ice Age was beginning to end, you can see there's this maternal haplogroup D4H3. Some of it is going into Japan, and the other part is going to the Americas. Um, and you can kind of see, uh, the article here is talking about the connection to some say China, some say Japan. But they say that the D4 sublineage, I think, is most prevalent in Japan nowadays, aside from the Americas. I think I'd have to double check, but um, maternal. It's interesting. A lot of these maternal subclades I'm connected to um, seem to really have a strong connection to Japan, or there is a connection to China and Korea as well, but there seems to be more of a shift to Japan genetically a little bit. Um, you can see you can find some in China, some in Japan, some in Korea. Um, when I look at my DNA, because you can see, it does have Native American, because really Native American, what it is, from what I gather ancestrally, is they are connected to East Asians, but then they also became in addition to. So it's kind of like uh, kind of how do I describe it? So you take the East Asian lineage, which is predominantly most of what the Native American ancestry is, like 65, 80%. I think mine it was over 70 East Asian. Because for some Native Americans, they're more they have a higher percentage of East Asian, and some have a lower percentage. And so the part that isn't East Asian, at least most of it, is ancient North Eurasian, and what that is that's lineage actually connected to Europeans. Actually, most commonly found in Northern Europeans, really. Um, and I'll see if I can pull that up for you. Um, it's what is that? Some call it Yamnaya, but before it was Yamnaya, it was it was really originally ancient North Eurasian ancestry, and I'll see if I can pull that up for you. And so you can see, because Yamnaya really is like a mixture of ancient North Eurasian and Caucasian hunter-gatherer. Um, and so you can see it's the highest in the Norwegians, because they have some of the highest steppe ancestry, which is connected really. to the ancient North Eurasian ancestry found in Native Americans, Europeans. Then it goes down to Lithuanian, Estonian, Icelandic, Scottish, Czech. Uh, then it goes further down to French, well, English too, Spanish North, Bulgarian, Tuscan. I think it's lowest in Sardinians actually. But anyways, it just shows that really, if you want to look at the Native Americans being like a composite of East Asian ancestry connected to the Japanese, and then that northern European steppe ancestry connected to well, northern Europeans, but also other Europeans as well, just in varying frequencies. That's one way you can look at it. But I notice with me, because see, with my dad, his match with the East Asian Henan province and Native American match that he got, it seemed to be closer together. Like it was like the distance was closer. For me, it's a little bit different. For me, the Native American lineage samples went a little bit further back, but the East Asian lineage still kind of stuck. And that's because, and the only thing I can think of is as the numbers get smaller, because you I know the Japanese say hafu, or I don't know if they'll also say quarter fu, but I think as you go from 100% to 50% to 25% to 12.5%, that difference between the ancient North Eurasian and the East Asian lineage gets smaller and smaller and smaller. I think for my dad it was like 30% native, 23% Japanese. For me it's like 16, 12. And so it's like a lot, the distance is a lot closer. And so whatever, because really this part that doesn't say Japanese is really more so step ancestry related to Europeans. But if you take that part out, then what you're left with is Japanese. And so to me, it kind of makes sense because I used to ask myself, it's like, Lito looks so similar to Taeko Shitama. Oh yeah, and then this is another individual. This is an Aikido elder. He's um, part of Nomad. He was kind of a guest, if you will, a surprise guest in Nomad Push's channel. He's an Aikido elder, 86 years old, and I noticed he looked a lot very similar to some of the Patagonian natives from South America. Like I feel like that they're just so connected, like they could be brothers and sisters. And that's because, even if the natives, some of them, well, a lot of them do have the ancient North Eurasian ancestry connected to uh, steppe populations related to Europeans, and to extent, I think even Indians in India, and other places. They still have that predominant East Asian lineage, and then I think, especially in Patagonia, a lot of them have maternal haplogroup D, including D4H3 or D4H, strongly connected also to Japanese. And so I think what it is that now I can kind of put two and two together and say, okay, now it makes sense. Now I can see why my uncle Cherokee Japanese Herman. Now I see why he looks like Nobu Uematsu. And I love the music of Final Fantasy. That's something that I thoroughly enjoy. Now I can see why Lito looks similar to Taeko Shitama, because it's the East Asian lineage connected to the Japanese. Um, and then of course I also got, because I was very close between Japanese and Korean. It was like a razor thin margin. It was so close, but the Japanese just ended up squeaking out for me. Because I think it's the additional Jomon ancestry. Because I know some Koreans have it too, but I think the Japanese just have a little bit more. But it's really also that the harmony of Jomon and Yayoi that also matters too, because I think because I feel like when I look at the Eiko Shitama, she could be both Jomon and Yayoi, and probably the same thing with my great grandmother Lita. She was probably a combination of both. And so that's why when people say, we're team Yayoi or we're team Jomon, um, I think, you can be both Jomon and Yayoi. You don't have to just be 100% Jomon. You just don't have to be 100% Yayoi. You can be a mixture of both groups, and I think that's really, um, you know, part of a lot of the history of Japan is really you have these two groups that once, some of them were at odds with each other, but then they learned how to meld together. They learned how to come together. They learned how to um, be like or understand things in the way Miyamoto Musashi would see it, kind of seeing it in the sense of the river. That um, let's see if I can find the quote here. The river cuts through rock not because of its power, but because of its persistence. I feel like Miyamoto Musashi was really a prime example of how you had these two seemingly opposing forces, two seemingly opposing uh, tribes of people that once, they didn't always see eye to eye. And Miyamoto Musashi was able to kind of merge those two parts of himself together. And that's really the beauty of it, to be able to see that, to be able to see, the way one can heal, the way one can come together, the way that I might use this for my thumbnail maybe because this is really cool. I'll have to see. I'll have to see who the artist is. Invisible Moon. Maybe we'll. I sometimes like to give credit to like if I use certain thumbnails from certain artists, like I like to give credit, or even when I'm doing music videos like Slow and Reverb, I like to do a little bit of that as well. Yeah, this might be a good image to use. But anyways, yeah, no, this is really nice. I'll probably use that. Um, it's just something to recognize, something to acknowledge, and this is what I try to help the Japanese understand, and even some of the other Native Americans will ask me, or other people will ask me, why do you feel such a connection to the Japanese? And I tell them, well, I feel like they've become part of my ancestry. They've become part of Celtic healer. Just like I'll show the video with the Hafus. No, like with Takashi, he's always interviewing people, and he's interviewed many people that are Japanese, but also are a mixture of other ancestries. And it's really cool to kind of, be able to see all the different mixtures and how, well, that they're still Japanese, but they're also now in addition to. Uh, that's something my Uncle Cherokee Japanese Herman would say. And so I think it's important to recognize, there is a way to heal, there is a way to come together, there is a way to show people it doesn't just have to only be one way. And then I was watching Kaya. She's a Japanese YouTuber. She was talking about the indigenous Japanese of Japan, such as Okinawa, and I think a little bit of Hokkaido as well, and other areas too. Um, and there are some native samples that do show that that they did mix with, like for example, the Jomon here. This is a prime example, actually. I'll probably see if I can maybe link. Hopefully, the YouTube comments will let me comment again because I can post quite a few comments, and I think sometimes the algorithm or whatever it just throws a hissy fit. But anyways, you can see that this individual that lived in Mexico in the 1700s was in fact connected to ancient Japan, Sanganji, Jomon, ancient Okinawa, Jomon, Japan. You can see even ancient Egypt, which is interesting. You have Malaysia, ancient Malaysia. Um, and there's also one with Yayoi as well. Um, you can just see the different populations are connected to. Yeah, there's one with Yayoi here. This is a little bit further back in time. See here, the populations. I think Ninvik or Ninva is connected to Ainu a little bit. I'll have to check, I think. Because or Ohatsuku, I think it's Ohatsuku. So you can see Yayoi is part of the admixture here, and a lot of other groups. Um, and yeah, you can see the Chukchi, Yakuts, there, Xiongnu. I had a match with Greenland that was like Bay, and I learned that the Bay, I think they originally were part of the northern Ming Dynasty, I think, the medieval China, that they introduced Buddhism, and I guess they went through Korea, and then they finally got to Japan, and that's how Buddhism came to Japan, was through the Shanbei, and the Ruran were some of the I read some of the descendants of the Shanbei, and Shanbei reminds me of Liu Bei, which is kind of, if you guys haven't played Dynasty Warrior Origins, um, I'd recommend, even if you just watch cutscenes, it's pretty cool. And so yeah, like I figure, it's one of those things where um I think people sometimes they get like a static image of, people are always going to be this one thing, they're not gonna ever change, they're just going to be one thing. And that's how it's always going to be for the dawn of time. Um, but the reality is that's not really how it is, because people change, or people can change. They have an opportunity to keep going, and to mix with just a plethora of different individuals, and everyone has a choice. Everyone has a choice whether or not they want to stay the same. Well, they do have a choice, but as my uncle Cherokee Japanese Herman would say, they can get the Mormon look, or they can start to look a little bit sickly, because if you narrow yourself too much, where you say, I'm only going to mix with only these individuals, and no one else, eventually you can get sick. And so I feel like the way to heal people, or the way to come together, is to say, you can come together like the Jomon in Yayoi did, or you can be like the anime character. You can be like the show it. This is one thing I love about Japan too, is just the colorful expression they have, and it reminds me a lot of the Coescar, where the Coescar, they're a tribe in Patagonia. Um, they're closely related to this group, closely, a little bit different. I'll show you. Um, there's another group, because that is one group, of course. But there's another one. Show it to you. Yeah, so this is another group. They mixed with each other, but they um, there was a Questcar elder who spoke about, how he would have these visions at night, about visions of almost like a fantasy, but it was no longer a fantasy. It became reality. It became um, like like experiencing a movie in 3D. And it makes me think a lot of the Japanese, how they are. To me, that was like almost like the origin of anime, like to be able to to see that fantasy and to actually write it, draw it or to animate it or to bring it to life. And when I use the word Shukaka, that's actually a word in Tlingit, which is a tribe in the Pacific Northwest, which means man ahead of us. Because really, the Kueskar are one of the groups with the highest amount of maternal haplogroup D4H3A, and that haplogroup also originally came from, well, connected to Northeast Asia and Japan. And so I thought that was quite fascinating how even after tens of thousands of years, how it just kept going. It just kept going like the rainbow. And that is one thing of the Queskar that they say one of their origin stories that they had a son and named him Rainbow. And so you can see how the lineage really kind of peaks. It does peak with the Tel Heche have it too, which is more connected to this group here, which is closer to the Aikido elder. Um, and they also have like D1G and some other haplogroups, but it's also connected to this haplogroup, to this group as well, the Queskar. And the cool thing about maternal haplogroup D, it makes me think of Will of D from like One Piece. Um, but you can see how um, this maternal haplogroup related to East Asians, you see it a lot in South America, a lot in this area. And then as you get a little bit further north, it kind of differs. You see more A and B. B is more related to Polynesians. A is connected to like Eskimos and Tibetans and Mongolians, I think. C is related to Tungzuk people. And so I think Northeast Siberians as well. And then you see D kind of gets a revival again as you get further into the north, because that's where they originally came from, or that's where, well, they originally came from Asia, from Northeast Asia, it looks like. That's probably why that maternal haplogroup peaks in Japan. And you can see the Eskimos, the Aleuts, and it's just something to kind of think about, to kind of consider, to kind of uh, ask yourself, can you see, um, can people see uh, anime? I know that sounds strange to say, but I guess what I'm saying is, can people can people see, um, oh, let's see if I can share it. Um, can people see this? Can people see you can be all these different characters, but you can still be part Japanese? Or you can be all these characters and you can still speak Japanese or be part Japanese, or and you can also be in addition to. Because when I look at, for example, even just Hafus, I already see part of this. I already see, the anime characters come into life. And it'll probably be even more so with um, quarter foods, or and then once you go beyond quarter foods, you go beyond the blood quantum, because in the U.S. and Canada they have what's called blood quantum restrictions, and my uncle Herman's told me about it, where you have to have a certain percentage of native from a particular tribe to be an enrolled member. But once you go past that restriction, you can understand that you can still be um, Japanese, but you can also be so many other things as well. And so, that's something that, like, because for example, like my dad is also he has quite a bit as well. Um, this was one of his top matches. I didn't get this one particular. Maybe I will later on, but it was like a match from Denmark, because I think it comes from my great grandfather Cleves, and this also reminds me a little bit of my grandmother Palma. And you can see the matches here. Yeah, yeah. And he was the one who got the Montana match, which I thought was cool. This was like from 12,000 years ago, and it was related to this maternal haplogroup. The same one that I mentioned here. Yeah, so this was the origin of this lineage. Like the mothers of this of this ancestor came from Northeast Asia and Japan. And so, and then, they call him Shukaka, but, you can also call him, or you can also say, um, I have to look again. Don't worry, I'll get it. Is it Watashi Taichi no Nochi no Otoko. Um, and so it's not just man ahead of us, but it's also man after us. And I think that's what's important to remember is that yes, you will have a person who came before, you have a person who's presently here, and then you have a person who is comes after. And I think Musashi understood that. He understood that he was not going to be the only Japanese person, that there were those who came before and those who would come after. And so, and see, my dad also, he's really a mixture. My dad reminds me a lot of Fumio Kishida, the one of the former prime ministers of Japan. And I told my dad, I feel like if you and Kishida met each other, you two would get along. You know, you two would. It's like my uncle Cherokee Japanese Herman and and Nobu Uematsu. Yeah. Um, Let me see. Do I have an image of? I think I saved it somewhere. Because when I looked at no, when I looked at Fumio Kishida, I was like, that's like my dad. Like he looks so much like him. I'll see if I can find him. And I know Japan has a new prime minister now, and I know there's been a lot of back and forth regarding the current news, but so far from what I've seen, I don't think it's all negative. I think that Japan will eventually steer towards a positive healing path, I believe. We all have our, hiccups, of course, but I think that things will eventually get better. I really do believe so. Sometimes, the storms can get a bit rocky. The storms they can shake, but I think things will get better. I'm gonna try to see if I can find this photo though, because I had it, but I don't know. I'll have to see. I kept it. Back. I thought I had it here. Where is he? Yeah, I'm gonna see if I can find this. It happens. Like I'm just trying to. See. If I can't find it, maybe I can share it another time. But yeah, but you can see already, even with my uncle Herman and with my great grandmother Lita, that there's already that keen resemblance. Hmm. Yeah, no, I think I'll just look another time. But yeah, no, it's just one of those things where that I think that once people can understand that, you know, and this is what I tell Uncle Herman, is that I think like with a lot of the natives, the enrolled members, I think that sometimes they struggle to see what the Japanese can see, because I think that some of the enrolled members they want to say, well, we only want to be like this forever. But when I tell the Japanese, a lot of them, I think they get it. They understand it better. They understand that, of course, they can still be Japanese, but it's not it's not going to be like everyone's just going to look exactly the same. It's like with anime. Like imagine if every anime character looked exactly the same. You know, I think that would. I mean, of course, maybe they could make an anime like that where everyone looks the same, but I feel like anime is really, like a palette of color, a palette of, there's a reason why people look different and why people have different personalities or why people um, are so animated. No pun intended. Um, but yeah, I think I'm gonna just cut this video short because I don't want to go too long, and I probably should get some rest after I drop off an order, and maybe I'll also see if I can, if the YouTube algorithm will finally let me leave some comments again, because I know it can be a little bit passionate at times when it comes to posting comments, but I can do that again. That'd be great. But alright, guys, I think I'm gonna be off for now. And hope you guys have found this insightful. Hope you guys have um, been able to learn from this. And hope you guys take care. Bye for now.